An urgent review of the way victims and witnesses of abuse should be treated has now been ordered. This after a woman took her own life when the man she'd accused of rape was acquitted. Tracy Shelby threw herself off a roof in Rochdale days after the verdict. The Greater Manchester Police Commissioner Tony Lloyd described the court process as brutal and said that many rape victims described going through it as being as traumatic as their original ordeal. Our Home Affairs correspondent Simon Israel has this report.
This was Tracy Shelby's home in Rochdale. It's where police came last Friday to break the news. The man she'd accused of rape had been acquitted. Behind the boarded-up windows, she pondered her fate. Giving evidence in 2 trials was not enough. This highly vulnerable woman was left angry and upset, despite the efforts of support agencies. The 41-year-old mother, in a moment of desperation, came here yesterday morning, 2 miles from her home. Police officers spent some time trying to talk her down from the top of that car park. But the impact of her ordeal at the hands of the criminal justice system proved too great to overcome.
All night I couldn't sleep because for me hearing her now finally have killed herself that way is really sad. Up to this morning I was talking about her.
Channel 4 News understands a number of rape allegations in Rochdale across a 6-year period led to suspicions of a serial rapist. The alleged victims were all of a similar profile to Tracy Shelby. The first trial last summer proceeded on 7 charges against 24-year-old Patrick Hall. 4 ended with not guilty verdicts. The remaining 3 went for retrial, with the alleged victims, including Miss Shelby, agreeing to give evidence again. Last Friday, the former soldier left court an innocent man, acquitted on all charges. 3 days later, Miss Shelby jumped to her death.
Whatever we do, we can't protect victims from the trauma of going into court, even if their evidence is given by video, in terms of the way that they are challenged, the way that often their character is undermined.
Rochdale has been a troubled town for Greater Manchester Police investigating sex crimes. The grooming cases drew an apology from the Chief Constable, Sir Peter Farrell. Today, the Forces Police and Crime Commissioner used Miss Shelby's case to call for a major review of how real or alleged victims are treated. Are you prepared to apologise this early on to the family of Tracy Shelby?
No, and I don't think that's the right thing to do, because we have been alongside Tracy all the way through this and through other victims. We will obviously absolutely look at what we've been involved in, but that is why, as I say, we welcome actually our Police and Crime Commissioner asking for a much wider review, because the difficulty with the IPCC investigation is it only looks at the police. We need a much wider examination of this whole system.
Miss Shelby's lifestyle was by all accounts chaotic, often driven by alcohol and drugs. Her family, though, tonight praised her courage, saying they were proud of her for standing up in court in both the trials.
Well, now all this comes at a time when the treatment of abuse victims is already under the spotlight. It's a year since Frances Andrade took her life after giving evidence against a teacher who'd abused her. Is there a way of making the system more understanding, more humane? Our social affairs editor, Jackie Long, is with me. Jackie, where does the Manchester case kind of leave the landscape of rape?
Well, I think it's been widely acknowledged for a very long time now that victims of rape and sexual assault have not been well served by the criminal justice system. And that was graphically illustrated in the past year with a series of high-profile sexual exploitation trials, when it became quite clear that young women had been complaining, first of all, to police that they had been raped and sexually abused for a long time, and they were effectively ignored by the police. And then if and when they were lucky enough to get to court, they faced aggressive, hostile questioning, character assassination. In one case, a young woman was cross-examined every day for 3 weeks. But it has to be fair to say that out of that has come some significant change. The Crown Prosecution Service have rolled out a number of specialist rape units now, which are going to be headed up by specially trained prosecutors. And the focus is very much on making sure that victims are supported the entire way through the process, that they have access to independent sexual violence advisors, and that special measures are taken in court whereby they never have to face the person they're accusing while they're giving evidence. So all of that is going on now.
What about beyond the courts? What about social services and the rest? I mean, is that all now in place?
I think that is part of a cultural change that people are trying to instill across the systems. I also think that it's fair to say most people would acknowledge that things are improving, but just not fast enough. Rape remains hugely underreported, with many victims still saying they don't believe they will be believed, and perhaps with good reason. Figures were released on Friday which show huge inconsistencies in the way police forces deal with rape allegations, with some forces designating up to a third of allegations as no crimes. Now clearly that is something which has to be looked at. And you saw Sir Peter Fahey, the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police, in Simon's piece, saying this is time for more radical change. He is not alone. Only yesterday, the former Director of the Public Prosecution Service, Keir Starmer, said even with all the changes which are being implemented, many of which he instigated, he said it's still not enough. The system now needs a radical look at how these cases are pushed through the courts. And I think victims would back that. A group of young women who successfully took their case to court, who successfully gained convictions against the men who brutally raped them, were asked, would you do it again? And they all said no, which I think tells you how far we still have to go on this.